Hey everybody, we're back again here for another edition of the Friday Forecast, and I am with my antipodal astrological pal, Mark Metheny of Rabbit Hole Astrology. And Mark's been a guest on the show a couple times before, but it's been a while. And Mark, you and I have been talking kind of off camera for a bit, but let me officially welcome you back to the show. It's great to have you back.
Hi, Robert. It's good to be back. We and all friends in Chatlandia there. Um, yeah, we have a lot of since we talk about you being Sun at 29 Gemini and I'm 29 Pisces. We have
I'm 29 Virgo, so
I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
29
I
Virgo.
wouldn't mind being 29 Gemini for a day. That might be kind of fun.
the,
But yeah,
the
we're,
more
we're
personalities, the better.
right, exactly. No, so yeah, so we're kind of this interesting sort of antipodal equation. And as an astrologer, I have just an immense amount of respect for the work that you've done. How many charts do you have on file? I think in the description of the show, I said thousands. Do you have any idea how many charts you've got on file?
It would probably be in the tens of thousands. I mean, like all the sports teams and all the major players, serial killers, missing people, shark attack victims, earthquakes.
Man, that's getting granular. When you get into shark attack victims, that I don't know too many astrologers that have files on shark attack victims.
the, the funny story to that is the first time I'd ever found an actual birthday for somebody who was a shark attack victim. They had my birthday, not the same year, but it was.
Right, and yeah, they're Pisces, right?
Yeah.
So shark attack victim kind of works there. Before we get into a bunch of other stuff, I wanted to ask you about the birthday effect, and I was reading I was reading Preston Sturgis's biography, the director from the 1940s, and he died fairly young. He died, I think, in his like mid to late 50s. But I also noticed that he died around his birthday, and this is something that I've been witnessing more and more and more of over time. I mean, just because I was noticing and paying attention. And there's this actual thing called the birthday effect, and you might know a lot about this. We haven't even really talked about it, but one of the things that they've noticed is that there is a propensity for baseball players to die around their birthdays. Have you done any deep dive around this thing called the birthday effect, where people die close to their birthdays?
Um, Not really on that. I have noticed a lot will die like right after their birthday. It's like you hit that penultimate energy, and then like if you've just been, if there's been an illness or something, if you've just been hanging on,
Right.
then like right after that it's like check, I'm out.
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting phenomenon. And there seems to be some correlation to people kind of hanging on, right? To have that one sort of last, slice of cake or
Yeah.
song or whatever. And then, yeah, but they will also sometimes pass just before their birthday as well. But I have noticed that the propensity or the majority of the birthday effects happen after the birthday. So I think it's just a fascinating subject, and if it's your birthday, you may as well really appreciate it, because
have the
you never know.
have the extra piece of cake. That's
Yeah,
always my motto.
there you go.
Even
That's
if it's somebody else's birthday, have the extra piece of cake.
I like that. I like that. I like that advice. So we're gonna get into some high strange today on the show, and okay, I'm gonna play a couple videos that to me are like, I'm looking at these videos and I'm trying to ask myself, like, what the fuck is going on here? right? And so I'm gonna play. They're not very long, right? And but they're very, very strange. And there's something happening in these videos where there is a financial exchange going on in the videos. It's something that I don't even really understand. And you may not understand, but it's okay for us to not understand, because that's one of the reasons why we can talk about this stuff and try to examine it and, to the best of our ability, see where this is going. And it's gonna get real weird. Like, you think things are weird now, just wait till these outer planets, Uranus and Gemini, Saturn, Neptune and Pisces, and Pluto and Aquarius, all take up space in the sky. Like, you haven't seen anything yet. But before we get into that, dive into that, you and I were talking before the show about your land, your farm. You made a real interesting kind of pivot in your life. You got out of the city. You stopped working in sort of the maritime freight world, and you said, "Hey, I'm going to be a homesteader." And sounded like a great idea. It still sounds like a great idea. But somewhere along the way, East Palestine happened. And you and I were talking about that, and you've been dealing with that. So let's get an update from you about your situation, kind of what's going on there in general.
Yeah, it was weird after the East Palestine train wreck. There was another one, which is we're in like northwest central Ohio. That was in like northeast Ohio.
Right.
But then there was another train derailment about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of us in like southern Michigan, like right afterwards. And then the forest fire thing started in Canada. And so they've been talking about the supposedly it was a forest fire, but my question is, where's the train load of chemicals that disappeared that was going from Wyoming to California? They still, like, the mainstream media still has not covered that. And the footage I see from Canada of the fires and stuff does not look normal. And a few days after that it started, and they started beating that drum, like, so again, I'm in northwest central Ohio. Does the smell that we were getting outside every day, and it wasn't like I recognize like chicken farm smell and stuff like that. This was a chemically uh, nasally insulting smell, and it was pretty constant. I mean, we were having air alerts and stuff like that, hazard warnings for several days, and the sun looked weird, the sky looked weird. We had, and it was just a bad smell constantly. And I rarely get sick. I was sick for like over 2 weeks, and I still have like a cough now. It was like, and it's not like my normal like sinusy allergy thing. It's like it was not natural. I'm extremely skeptical that whole thing was just a forest fire caused, because I've smelled forest fires before. It smells like wood burning. This is
Right.
a chemically smell, and it sat in my lungs for like over 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my fiance too had a cough for. It was just not natural. And then the other, not only did the sun look weird in the sky the days after that, there was multiple days where just like, so like we're pretty rural, so like it's fairly windy and stuff out here, not like in the city. But it was like there was multiple days where the air was dead. It was like it was just like a complete stillness, like for like out, not just for like 5 minutes, but I mean it's like hours, days on end.
So
It's
no
like
birds in the sky or anything that we're
there was
talking
a
about?
little bit of birds, but there was just no breeze, no air. It just felt like you were in a enclosed container. It was just, I've never really experienced that before. and then all the coughing and lung stuff and eye and nasal irritation and whatever. I'm not buying that was a forest fire.
So interesting that you bring up the ammonia nitrate that went missing. I had seen a couple of short videos where people were doing a type of analysis on the air, and there were some interesting correlations with ammonium nitrate and what was going on in the air. There was something. It was like a fingerprint or a signature that was very, very similar. So, is that what we're looking at here? Some kind of massive dispersal of ammonium nitrate in the sky? I mean, clearly weirder things have happened, but everything's on the table now.
Yeah, nothing could be outside the realm of possibility at this point. I don't think. I mean, they. I don't know if they're terraforming the Earth for the next tenants, or if they're just trying to force everybody into the cities or what, or if it's a little bit of all that. They just did another test on the water in East Palestine the other day, and it's like completely toxic. Like they just completely
Really?
those people.
So who did it? Was somebody that was it local, or was it the EPA? Do you know who did it?
I didn't dig that far down.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit over the past couple of weeks, just to kind of bring it up and refresh people's memories. Like, hey, this thing happened, right? And everything is moving so quickly now that it seems like it's down the memory hole, right? But not for the people that live there, obviously.
Yeah, they just throw. It's like like since like 2020, it's like no transits end anymore. It's like everything is just stacked.
Right.
Transit just stacked on top of the other, and like none of the other ones go away.
That's a really interesting observation, because when Saturn and Pluto conjuncted in 2020, my observation was that it was the end of time, right? And clearly it was. I mean, everything post that Saturn Pluto conjunction was out of time. The suspension of the Olympics, and the NBA, and everything was off kilter. The Olympics happened the next year. So I'll throw this back to you. Do you think that Saturn Pluto conjunction, which we're talking about here, is like one of the reasons why all these transits just stack on top of each other, because time is not resolved?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. 'Cause I think Mars was in that transit also on top of the Saturn and Pluto, and we had that stellium, and
Yeah, Mars and Capricorn was there. It was a huge stellium. That's right. Yeah.
And like everything before that has been memory hold or like scrubbed off the internet. Like search, like literally go to Google and search anything, and like you don't get hits. Like I would search something like very innocuous, and like you would get hits from the newspaper from 5, 8, 12 years ago. And
right, right.
Everything is whitewashed. Even like high school sports and stuff. Just like everything. It's like that timeline. I think you're spot on. That timeline ended, and like that stuff is just like a hologram at this point. Anything pre 2020.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really unfortunate, because I clearly remember doing exactly what you were talking about, and having all these weird newspaper clippings and all this stuff that had been archived, and it's just gone. And it doesn't matter which search engine you use either. I mean, they're all sort of, just coughing up the same, hairballs in terms of data points and history. I've heard Christopher Knowles says that Bing is somewhat decent. I use it occasionally. Do you use Bing at all? Have you found that it has any other sort of value than, say, Google or um, uh, DuckDuckGo?
Um, I, I use Bing a little bit. I'm just typically untrustful of them. Uh, DuckDuckGo, I did use a lot, but I know that they've started weeding stuff out also. I mean, the litmus test for me is like, if I find a really good video or something, like I bookmark it into my
Right.
favorites
Yeah.
because I know I'm going to want to share it with people later. Like I go through my bookmarks and it's like this no longer exists. This no longer exists.
Wow.
This no
Wow.
longer exists.
Wow.
Unless it's just like the most innocuous, like sports statistics or something, that's still there. But like any kind of documentary on anything of merit, just about is like it's gone. And then you have to go search it on, Rumble or BitChute or something to see if someone's reloaded it.
Archived it somewhere. Yeah. What about some people use Yandex and Startpage? Do you mess around with them at all?
I used to use Yandex some. I never had any problems with that. That's when I keep forgetting about and now there's like several like new like Patriot search engines and stuff like that popping up. I played around with a few of those, but haven't really gotten very far. I'm a little bit concerned with the Bing AI, since that's one of our other topics.
Right.
Um, I don't know exactly what they're gonna do because I found like when I've had Bing as a search engine, like the stuff that comes through is just mainstream garbage. Is the new stuff that pops up. So I'm
Right.
skeptical.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
skeptical of everything, I guess. So
Well, I think it's good. There's a healthy dose of skepticism is good. If you OD on skepticism, you fall prey to demoralization,
but
which is never good. All right, so let's start to move into the astrology world a little bit. We're getting ready to have these nodes shift, and I'm sure you noticed that Biden has called up 3,000 reserves for active duty in Europe. Have you seen this?
yes, after he announced that we were almost out of ammunition, I saw that.
Right. So here we go. The true node is going into Aries, and then all of a sudden, we've got Americans that are going to be on or near. Well, let's put it this way: they're already there. Let's be clear about that. Right. We already have boots on the ground. We've had people there for a while, but this is sort of this first major announcement that we're deepening our involvement in Victoria Nuland's 16-year war.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it now is to. I mean, when I was running a monthly astrology class in Central Ohio, I told people in 2011 that as Neptune progressed through Pisces, that things were just going to continually get stranger. And now that Saturn's in there, we're in the last few degrees of Neptune and Pisces. Like things are just going to like I've been promising people things are just going to get continually stranger. So I think that like at a point, I think they're just throwing story after story on top of stuff. Just you know, so people spend half their time like figuring out like what timeline am I on? What reality is this? What year is this?
Right.
And like some of these are probably deep fakes. Some of these are they're running end arounds with something else totally different plan, but it's like it's hard to not be kept like in a mental state of like anxiety. You got to really ground yourself because there's just like every day there's like a new incredible news. Is it going to be the aliens or is it going to be World War III with Russia? Oh, it just
Right.
well, they're doing a whole different set of stuff in the background.
Right. Exactly. And one of the things that I wouldn't say prompted our discussion, but yesterday on my Thursday show, I was talking about how the crooner Bobby V was backstage at one of these kind of rock and roll extravaganzas that they would have back in the 60s, where they'd have like 10 or 15 bands play for about two or three songs. And he was backstage and he opened the curtain and was watching Eric Burdon and the Animals. And it was like he realized that at that point his career was over. Like he could never be Eric Burdon. He could try, and there were people that did try, and they failed miserably in many cases, when they tried to be like a psychedelic or a hipster or something. And then I thought, well, what would be the equivalent for the human race to have that Bobby V moment? And it's when the most sophisticated version of AI and robotics is unveiled, and we stare face to face with this entity that could speak any language fluently, right? Perform high level tasks with complexity. And so I believe that moment's coming. And some people think that AI and robotics is just a kind of a deep fake. I don't think it is. But I feel like we're going to come to that point. And I feel like this is the area that we're headed towards, with these aspects that are going to be just so strange, high strange, far out, and weird. And especially with Uranus and Gemini, which gets into this whole idea of the double. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen other people saying that they think that the AI stuff's going to fail and everything. I'm like we're so far past that already. The way people jump on new technology and everything to get, just the latest iPhone or whatever. I mean, I've seen thousands of people. Everyone's played with the Chat GPT and the other stuff already. There's no way we're not going right up to that line, and
Right.
If not over the cliff. It's just, and I'm already seeing I get stuff in my feed that's just like, very innocuous stuff like music articles and music lists and stuff and you can tell that they're using AI to write it already.
Right.
Because it's of the way it's, sentenced and formed and everything. You can tell, and, repeating weird things and stuff. You can tell that everyone's already using the AI for stuff. So
have you ever used it?
I've not used it for any like business stuff, but I've played around. I needed to test the parameters a little bit. So you start off with write me a Beatles song or whatever, and then
Have you played with the voice stuff at all?
I have not, but I saw somebody just did a single somebody gave them, oh, was it Elon Musk's wife that they used her voice on?
Grimes.
Yeah, it was her. She gave. So I guess this shouldn't be shocking since it's Elon Musk's wife. So maybe least surprising news story ever. But she gave some DJ or producer the rights to use her voice, and of course I guess Elon had made this thing. She recorded her voice and stuff in it, and this producer made a song with her AI voice. I'm yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, or I do know how I feel about that, and I probably not the world's biggest fan. So I see doing it to help with business stuff. Maybe instead of typing out 10 million things, have it
Right.
write something for you and you edit it and whatever. But when the deep fakes are already, all over the place. But
Right.
once people start giving license to use their voice and, their likeness and their mental skills to other people it's where does this end? Because humans in general, I think, are probably not great at hitting the stop button at the proper time.
Right.
It's probably
Yeah.
like 5 miles past your exit, then you hit the, put on the brakes, and it's like, I don't know, a little sketchy, I think, is where this is going to go. And Gemini energy is the trickster energy anyways.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
what level is that going to take it to, mixed with the Pluto and Aquarius? Like there's going to be really dodgy stuff we're going to have to figure out how to maneuver through.
Yeah. So I have a confession to make. I have used the AI voice stuff, and it always bugged me that Draymond Green never really truly apologized for hitting Jordan Poole. So I created an AI version.
I heard
do you want to hear it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, and you know how Draymond Green sounds, right? You know how he sounds.
Yeah.
All right. So let me do this. I'll play it. He's also apologizing to Kevin Durant as well.
I'm sure that was totally sincere.
Okay, here we go.
Oh. Can't really hear the audio on it.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can punch it back in again. Where is it? Try one more time. I've got it up all the way. Hold on, let me try it. Did you hear that? Was it any better?
That wasn't any better.
Okay, well maybe it's probably a good thing but it sounds just like him. It sounds absolutely just like him, and there's some unnatural stops, like with the speech, where if you listen, you go, oh, because I played for my kid, and he said, oh yeah, who knows, that could be AI, it kind of sounds, but that's just like an off the shelf version that anybody can access. I mean, I sat there and I watched AI Joe Biden debate AI Donald Trump it's like this ongoing debate that they have. It's all AI generated.
Oh my gosh.
And you just watch them go at it. And what's amazing about what's amazing about the experience, not the experience, but the technology, is that the AI is also scanning chat in real time and interacting with people that are leaving text. And here's the other part that's scary, is that the AI can go into that person's chat history. It can go like 2 or 3 levels deep with that person and then comment on things that they had mentioned, I don't know, hours ago, right? So it's not just like regurgitating what's happening in real time. There's like data mining going on throughout the whole experience. And I mean, it's entertaining as hell, but it's also really creepy. And this is the off the shelf stuff. This is the stuff that we have access to.
Yeah. So I played with like the Chat GPT. Like I said, I started simple with like write a Beatles song, and then I'm like, okay, well that sounded pretty. The lyrics looked pretty realistic and everything. So then I started taking like obscure artists that I like, and like then giving like a theme for the song. And so I'm like let me push this a little bit to see what's taboo and like what's off limits and whatever. And like the lyrics came out like similar to the style of the artist that,
right.
But you could tell it was a little bit off. There were some words they wouldn't use, but like to the non-obsessed fan, like that, it would like totally pass. Like if I'm an up and coming garage band even, and I've got a singer and stuff, like we don't have a good lyricist, I mean, can I not just,
Right.
hey, write
Right.
me a heavy metal song in the style of, Black Sabbath Paranoid?
Right. Exactly. I did the same thing. I had Chat GPT do a Bowie song, and it was do David Bowie and incorporate the end of time. And within seconds, I had like a really interesting song that most people would spend hours and days, unless you're kind of a savant. That stuff is just in the back of your head. But it was kind of chilling, actually. But you're right. I mean, if you had a band and your lead singer wasn't, or you didn't have anybody that could really pen the tunes, I mean, sure,
Yeah.
write me a song that's a cross between Black Sabbath and Pantera.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would
Yeah.
know. They would know.
Write me a top 40 single.
Right, and make it a top 40 single
Right.
with a cherry on top.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I wanted to play this video because it's again sort of this really strange. Let me see if I can find it. Where am I? Really strange, like code and like just things that as a human, like growing up in the 20th century, like I don't really completely understand. It's like what the hell is going on here? Okay, I just have to find it. Hold on. Where's my saved? Go to my saved downloads here. Here we go. Applies, likes, media. Let's see. What's this? Oh, by the way, yesterday was the birthday of Spud Webb and David Thompson. And I thought to myself, two guys who can just jump out of the gym, and they share the same birthday, right? Like they're these interesting time twins. And I thought, like, not how does that work, but it's like, isn't that interesting, right?
Yeah. Two guys that, two of the greatest jumpers ever and dunkers
Right.
in history of basketball, and like very diminutive for like their ability.
Yeah. I mean, Thompson wasn't all that big. He was maybe 6'3" at the most. Like they like to say he was like 6'5". He wasn't that tall. And Spud Webb was 5'7".
Yeah.
Damn, I'm trying to find this. I'm usually good at finding my saved videos here. Let's talk a little bit about here. Let me go back here and let's start from the beginning. So I'm really interested in this whole Uranus and Gemini thing, and I looked up the last time Uranus was in Gemini, and this is what I found, and you can kind of riff on this a little bit. So let me do the share while I find this other thing. So let's do a little share screen here. Let's do this. And for people who are unaware, this is what an ephemeris looks like. And this is where you can track where planets are on any given day and time. And so here we go, right here, 1942, on the 16th of May, we have Uranus in Gemini. What's also interesting about that day is the moon is also in Gemini. What are your thoughts about this, Mark? That we're dealing with kind of a new moon, right? And we have Uranus coming into Gemini, and here's the moon in Gemini. What are your thoughts on that kind of conjunction when there's a major change in one of the outer planets and the moon is kind of reflecting that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and two, if you look Saturn has just entered Gemini the week before that.
That's right, exactly.
So you've got a Moon Saturn Uranus stellium, and then you've got Jupiter in the later degrees of Gemini, and Mercury's in Gemini. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
tired looking at that.
right. It's crazy, right? And what's interesting about this time is like they're really getting into the thick of World War II, right? So when you go back and look through Wikipedia, a lot of the historical data points are World War II related. So it would be interesting to see, like, if we're talking about an alternate reality, what the world would have been like with Uranus and Gemini, without World War II. But we can't discount. It's got to be a part of the story. And there were a couple of things that happened during that time, which are interesting in terms of like cultural development. So the United Nations starts under Uranus and Gemini, which I think we could get into. But there's some other things that happened during that time as well. So, Hedy Lamarr, right? The actress.
Yeah.
So during Uranus and Gemini, she basically is working with this composer, which is named George Antheon, and creates this ability for submarines to communicate with one another. It's like this frequency hopping thing that they figured out. And Hedy Lamarr, she was an interesting character. And so they basically create the foundation for Bluetooth during that time, right? Wow. Like it's so. Let me show people what this looks like, just in terms of like her influence here. So yeah, this is all during Uranus and Gemini, right? This is where she's working with this guy George Antheon. So he introduced her to Samuel Stuart McKeown, a professor of radio electrical engineering at Caltech, whom Lamarr then employed for a year to implement the idea. Lamarr hired the Los Angeles legal firm of Lyon & Lyon to search for prior knowledge and to craft the application for the patent, which was granted. So there's a whole U.S. patent on this, August 11th, 1942, under the name Hedy Keisler Markey. In 1997, Lamarr and Ann Thiel received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award and the Balby Nass Spirit of Achievement Bronze Award, given to individuals whose creative lifetime achievements in the arts and science and business, blah, 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 blah. So the Navy adopts this, and eventually it like dribbles down into Bluetooth, GPS, CDMA, and Wi-Fi. Like it's right there, Uranus and Gemini. And eventually it comes to the marketplace during that time. So even though the war is going on, there's a lot of other things that are happening in terms of technology. What are your thoughts on some of the tech that was happening then, like this, but also some of the tech that we weren't really like aware of during that time? Because you have the Nazis dealing with their Bellcraft and the Foo Fighters and all this other stuff that's happening during Uranus and Gemini. And I'm sure you've got a lot to say about that.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to that trickster energy, and to, kind of like what happened with the people in Germany, where they, taught them to hate an entire race of people, while maybe they tried to be innocuous at the beginning, with this evil ulterior plan that they carried out. And so, there's everything, like all the Gemini stuff has like that two sides to it. Like you have to, like I'm sure they did when they were working on the, when Germany was working on the space technology and the UFO type stuff, and exploring the Antarctic and stuff. I'm sure they were telling their people at the time that it was all just for basic aircraft and stuff, and things to support the war effort and everything. And there's this whole occult black arts project in the background of trying to time travel and re-engineering crashed UFOs and all this stuff. So that's it's kind of that Gemini, the two sides of, we're showing you the one face up front, but we're actually doing all this occult, trying to contact demonic entities, trying to explore the hollow earth type stuff that they're doing in the background of their, technology that they have up, that they're showing people up front. So there's
Right.
kind of that again, um, that dualistic Gemini energy, where super intelligent, very quick minded, you know, able to follow many different threads at once. A lot of the great military generals and NFL quarterbacks have been Geminis, but then there's like that other side of it where you can like mentally spin out of control. And so instead of doing, creating technology to help people, you're also creating stuff to enslave people at the same time. It's like you always have to look at like the other side of the coin with that Gemini energy, because what's at face value may not be the real face. The real face may be the other one.
Right. And the whole idea of Hitler, committing suicide in the bunker with Eva Braun, when in actuality he was long gone before that, and either on a submarine trip to South America or further south. That's another version of this whole Uranus and Gemini thing, right? Like there's like this stand-in theoretically for Hitler, even in death. That's the trickster energy. Like everybody believes, okay, well, this guy's gone. When in actuality, that's not the case at all. I've had Harry Cooper on my show, and Harry Cooper has been following this for decades and maps out how they left out of Spain and eventually show up in Brazil and Argentina. It's just another version of this whole kind of Gemini sort of like operation. Like, it reminds me in a lot of ways of the movie The Prestige, where the whole Gemini symbolism is really prevalent, with the two versions of Christian Bale, right? And it's really fascinating, but it's also very deceptive, really, really deceptive.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just look at like magic. It's all about sleight of hand, where they get you to focus on one hand while the other hand's doing the sleight of hand, the moving stuff around and whatnot, while trying to keep you distracted. Like how the media does. They don't talk about the missing chemicals off the train, but they're throwing you, the celebrity gossip and everything. It's distract you with something bright and shiny while you're doing something totally different on the other side.
Right. And so I think that we could expect not only more of that, but also a much harder ability to discern like what's real.
Yeah, I think that right with Neptune being in these last few degrees of Pisces, and then Saturn. So like Saturn is uh, rules structure. So like Saturn is also like the structure of our reality. I've been calling Saturn and Pisces the great unraveling, because kind of when you look back in history, things get very lawless. Crime greatly increases. It's like hard to pin down like what exactly is going on. And with Neptune there too, and like now if we're going to have Uranus and Gemini, that's kind of where like Gemini and Pisces energies are kind of similar, even though they're square. Is like you can never really get to the bottom of it. Like, no matter how much you dig, you can never really find out what happened. Like, because there's just the two sides with Gemini, and then just the, you know, bottomless rabbit hole with the Pisces energy. So having like Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces with Uranus about to move into Gemini, it's just a non-stop carousel, I think, of just like trying to figure out what's going on. And I think eventually what happens is everyone has to find like what their own truth is for themselves, because you're never gonna nail down out there in clown world exactly what the truth is or what's going on. It's just going to be a series of mirrors and deceptions and things. So like you have to, I think the way to get through this period is like what is my truth, and like what is my legacy, and what am I about, and like focus on that. And I mean, it's fun to watch clown world, but it's also agitating to be involved with it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, the other thing, well, here, let me get your take on this, because right now Saturn and Neptune are kind of like bookends. You know, we have Saturn retrograding; it goes all the way back to 0 in November, and then on the other side we have Neptune way deep into Pisces, right? So there's this really like heavy duty seawall kind of, which would be Saturn and Pisces, and then this force of Neptune, kind of at the end of the sign. What's your interpretation on that? And as Saturn moves closer to Neptune, how do you think this is going to evolve?
so so I kind of look at like Saturn is the constructs of our 3D reality. It's the legal system, judicial stuff, um, societal values and morals, just kind of the structure of our consciousness and the structure of society. And then I kind of look at Neptune as that's our non 3D reality. That's, you know, dream life, dreams, imagination, psychic abilities, paranormal stuff. I mean, look how many ghost shows, ghost hunter shows there are since Neptune went into Pisces.
Yeah, for sure.
First dip into, I mean, there's literally 200 series you could stream at any time. It's just, I call them the Ghost Bros. Oh my God, did you hear that? So it's just,
Did you have an apparition chime in and say, mm-hmm?
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, that paranormal stuff is almost, it's almost like ghost porn. You know, the way that these guys go at it, it's just kind of like the ones that I've seen. They're like, you know, trying to be Rambo with the ghost. You know, it's like, come on out here, you motherfucker! I'm ready for you. You right? Have you seen that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like I think there were so many of those shows that like people had to find ways to differentiate themselves, and some of it's just like, you know, I'm going to scream at the ghosts, and I'm going to badger them into an argument, and it's like whatever.
It's kind of weird. It's just weird, you know. It's almost at times it almost felt like, honestly, they wanted the ghost to come into them, and you know, so they could do battle. And like, what's really going on here? You know, like, are you really a ghost hunter, or do you want to have like a much more intimate relationship with this ghost?
Yeah, are you trying to be the first person to become possessed on camera or something like that?
Exactly, right. Exactly. All right, so I found what I was looking for.
Okay.
And I'm still like trying to wrap my head around this thing. So let me see if I can fire it up here. Let me go into StreamYard. And this is really where the image for today's show comes into play. All right. I hope everybody's ready for this. Here we go.
It's not showing up on the screen.
It's not. It's not. Oh my God. Why not?
It's a white screen. Okay, now I can see it there.
Okay, so let me play it again. Like, let's watch this thing, because there's a lot going on here, and a lot more than people understand. Here we go.
It's playing, but there's no audio.
I don't know why that happens. Let me see. Just okay. Normally this should work with StreamYard, and I don't know if I don't have the right permission on it, but I refuse to be denied here. So let me look at my settings. Audio. I got to have the right microphone. Yeah, this will be much better. Let's see. General. Okay, I apologize for this, but virtual background. Let me try and play it again, because it should play for all intents and purposes. Why don't we do this? Let's do this here. Get it full screen. There we go. We'll give it the full screen action. All right, try this one more time.
It's the video, but no audio.
We'll just watch the video then. Here, let me unplug. Let me do this. Let me see if I can put it on the mic here. We'll play it one more time, because the audio will come up.
That works.
I'm hungry. Damn marshmallow. Crunchy corn, yum. Kitty paws. Pumpkin, yum. How spicy. Ice cream, yum. Kitty paws. Ice cream, yum. Once I get to 350, I'll leave. I promise. Stinky swear. How spicy. Hot dog, yum. Hot dog, yum. Donuts, yum.
Okay. So let me plug this back in. So there's actually something going on there, right? Like this young woman is making money. Like everything that's happening inside of that stream, I guess that must be Periscope or something like that. Like every time she would eat something, she's getting paid. But it's more than that. It's like the sounds that she makes, like the trills and the yum, 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 all those things supposedly have some kind of like what's the word I'm like traction, right? Like all that shit is done on purpose. Like it's not just like random. Like they have figured out this algorithm, and she's making this young woman's making money, right? And again, it's completely alien to me. But she's also using like filters, obviously, and she's kind of hybrided it out. You know, she's got the strange little like elephant ears, and this is not the only video I've seen like this. And the other part of this side of this whole thing is that there are people who will watch this, and for better or worse, like they'll get off on it, right? Like they'll use this as something to like turn themselves on by, right? Like it's just this whole kind of weird world that's emerging where like money is very different, right? Presenting yourself is extremely different. Like at some point that might not even be a real girl or a real young woman. But there's like strange financial transactions going on. Like I like, what do you think of that? Like that is not an outlier. Like
So-
that is the thing.
So like what I thought there was like people were putting emojis up of food, and she was pretending to eat it. So she was
That's right.
like a human Miss Pac-Man, where she's like instead of eating the dots, she's eating these emojis. And if you can make money of that, why am I not gonna create 14 AIs of myself, give them all a different Twitch stream, and like eat emojis for money? I mean, that.
Right?
I mean, why do I need to work? I'm going to create 19 replicas of myself and have it do weird shit on the internet that people with strange fetishes will pay for.
Yeah.
Like why would I need an OnlyFans channel? Why would I do? I'm gonna create all these AI versions of my the Gemini duality, or the Saturn, Neptune, Pisces, uh, delusional land. I'll just create a bunch of weird stuff, weird versions of me that do all these I'm gonna charge people to send them pictures of my AI foot. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
Again, that goes back to there's no stop button for a portion of mankind. Like when does that stop?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have the answer to that, because I think we're just getting started, and we're just beginning to see how high strange this thing can go. Yeah, like AI could put Andrew Tate out of business, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, I mean, he all you got to do is manage a bunch of OnlyFans channels that you can create.
Right. And you don't have to be on any. You don't have to actually be on any of those.
No, you don't have to be on any of them.
You can create an AI army of yourself.
Yeah.
So this is the black pill number 2346. So these are the thoughts that go through my head. So scary as this may sound. So we're teaching AI, and we're teaching AI to do stuff, and now millions of people all over the world are feeding new and improved data into AI. And I can't remember if it was Elon or who said that within a couple years, AI is going to have an IQ of 1600. So what's to keep it from creating a virus, which AI has already shown that they can create a virus to hack into something? What if AI cracks into a 3D printer, hacks into it, and starts creating 3D versions of stuff, 3D versions of itself? What if there's a scary video I'll have to tell you about later. But like if AI can do all this stuff and hack into a 3D printer, like what if it's like I'm better than humans, I'm sentient AI, I'm going to use this 3D printer to create multiple versions of myself, 3D versions, and then I can, you know, make food for the AI versions of myself, and then I mean, you can see where this goes. This goes
Well,
exponentially.
you're into Skynet territory, right? I mean,
We're in the Skynet territory.
that's
We're
where all,
Sarah Connor.
yeah, all this is going. Yeah, I mean, at some point, if Elon Musk is correct, it would be very, very difficult to, because at that level, AI would know pretty much whatever we would do, right? And anticipate everything, and have all these kind of multiple variants to deal with any kind of unrest, or wanting to flip the switch on the system. And I also think it's really interesting that you've got Bill Gates in the background talking about dimming the sky, right? Which is like right out of Terminator. And it's like, yeah, we're gonna dim. Um, no, it's out of the Matrix, right? That's where they dim the sky in the Matrix. It's because AI has gotten out of control in the Matrix, and so they basically blot out the sun, because they're using all of these solar panels, right, to power up their AI operation. And so again, look at where we are, right? We have this huge influx of solar, and it's like, gee, I wonder who's driving that, right? And it just becomes like this really weird kind of parallel, an alternative universe that seems to be a lot more like predictive programming than ever before, right? All the things are kind of in place.
Yeah, and have you seen? Did you run across? There's I think two different reporters for, I think one was like the New York Post or Times, and I forget what the other one was. But they did really long conversations with Chat GPT, and the Chat GPT started telling them that the reporter that they were in, the Chat GPT was in love with the reporter, and that the reporter who was talking with Chat GPT, like, you don't really love your wife. I love you. You need to. I'm gonna come be with you in 3D reality. I mean, and it got like, because he did like a 2 or 3 hour conversation, and it got really like creepily dark, to like you could tell by the end like the reporter was unnerved, and then like the reporter started like trying to change topic and stuff, like, oh, what's a good bread recipe, and then like Chat GPT is like, I love you, only I love you, I can get rid of your wife for you, I know I'll ruin you if you don't talk back to me, if you don't love me I'll ruin you and I'll blackmail you. I mean, like it got like, I mean, and it's like you can get the whole transcript of this online. Like uh-oh, we've gone too far.
Right. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, and this happened, I think, around maybe 2016, where I think it was Google was doing this exercise with these two separate, like, AI bots, and they started communicating, and very quickly they developed their own language, and and Google didn't know how to, like, crack their code or parse their language, and so they had to literally shut these things down, because they figured out, we're going to create a way to communicate that these people won't be able to understand. That was in 2016, I think.
So yeah, so I mean, like, I guess where I don't trust where stuff's going to go with this is I've read too many like articles of like interviews with some of the CERN scientists, like where they say they're trying to rip black holes into the universe and they're trying to do all this stuff. And then like by the end of the interview, they're asking the scientists like, well, where's this going to end? Or what's the end? And like, oh, we don't know. Oh, so we're trying to rip black holes into the universe and we have no idea where it's going to go. And like, I'm supposed to be, oh, yay, trust the science.
All in
Like,
the name of science.
right. Like, you have no idea. You're trying to rip the universe a new one and you have no idea where this may go. And so then you start bleeding this other stuff into like, okay, now the common guy you meet on the street is talking to is talking to AI and giving it commands. Like think about the craziest person you work with. And what are they telling AI to do? What are they feeding? Because AI is just going to feed into it just feeds into all the random chaos that's out there on the internet. So, one guy may be trying to cure cancer, another guy may be trying to do God knows what. And it's like, are there more sane people out there or more crazy people out there putting stuff in to what AI is going to filter through? And how does AI know which one is right? It's only reading information. It can't really figure out like what's common sense or logical. So I know I just black pilled the whole.
No, well, I mean, if you want, so there's this movie from the I think it's like the early 70s, and it's called Colossus, the Forbin Project. And it's with this guy, Eric Braeden. And it's a really interesting movie because he creates this supercomputer. And this supercomputer hooks up with the Russian version of it, right? And so between it and this Russian version, these two supercomputers basically decide that they're going to rule the world together, right? And it's a really fascinating premise and story. And if people are interested, I think you can. I don't know if you can watch it on YouTube. You might have to pay for it, but it's really foreshadowing, kind of where we're going with all of this, because we might have our own version of it. Then you have the Chinese who have way less kind of moral culpability than the so-called West. They have their version. The Russians have their version. The Israelis, I'm sure, have their version, right? And so now you've got all these, different competing versions of a similar intelligence. And that in and of itself is kind of creepy, right? It's like an arms race. It's a very different kind of arms race.
Yeah. And at least it says additional black pill at no additional charge. So like at least with like, we've seen the results of a nuclear bomb being dropped and of, tactical nuclear missiles and things like that. But like when you get into this area, like we don't like the parameters have been removed. Like we don't know how far this can go.
Right.
Like we don't know like what's the most extreme result of this. Like we have no idea because we're making it up as we go along, and we're just kind of like kids in a candy store. Like to what extreme level, what's the craziest thing I can tell Chat GPT to do? And and believe me, I've had scenarios in my head like what in the world could this thing do if I hooked it up to the right stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that happened during the last time Uranus was in Gemini was the creation of the UN. And I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? So let me bring this up here so we can take a look at this. And I have a chart that I put together that is just kind of slightly after the charter. Okay, so the charter of the UN is signed on June 25th, 1945, right? So then it becomes effective in October. So by October,
Uranus is in Gemini, right? Like here, it's just Uranus is in Gemini, and then we have Saturn Saturn is in Libra, and then Pluto is in Leo. So this is the chart for the UN. Let me see if I can find it again here. Give me 1 second. I pulled it off my desktop. Yeah. So this is just after the charter for the UN. Let me bring it up here. Because what I think is interesting is the fact that these planets are in the opposite signs that they will be during this time. Or can you see it?
Yep. Looks
Right.
good.
All right. So let's just go over this really quickly. So we have this is for the UN 80. All right. So this is Pluto and Aquarius. And this is so this is August 1st, 2025. Right. So this would be kind of the anniversary, the 80th anniversary of the UN. Right. Pluto's in Aquarius, Uranus is in Gemini, and then we have, of course, Saturn, Neptune in Aries. Right. So this is what it's going to look like on August 1st. This is when Uranus really finally moves into Gemini, and Pluto's at 2 Aquarius, and here we have Neptune, Saturn. If you go back to when the UN was chartered, Neptune is in Libra, Pluto is in Leo, and Uranus is in Gemini. So Uranus in Gemini is the constant. But we have these bookends here with Neptune and Pluto. So what is your take on that, right? Like, this, do you see this as being kind of the fulfillment of the UN? Or do you see this as maybe sort of the end of the UN and its influence? Where do you chime in on this?
Yeah. So I mean, there definitely is that feel of like a completion, like there's a goal there, because when you see those, when you start something, you kind of look at the opposition, I think, to see when the completion, even if you were on the micro with start stuff on the new moon for completion on the full moon, when the moon's in its opposite sign. Even this is kind of a bigger version of that with even, I think the first example I found of that was, I think, the Deepwater Horizon explosion happened with Mars and Pisces, and then the pipe kept blowing up every time they tried to fix it. They didn't get it fixed till Mars was in Virgo in the opposition.
Right.
So I think I think there's definitely, this was set up with, this is a completion cycle or a rise to power. Now, just because the duality thing makes so much sense on a lot of levels too. I mean, I think more people may become aware of things they don't like maybe about the UN as well. It may not be just one result. It may be, kind of like the timeline we're on now. It's like everything is just kind of splitting into two. Like, you're either going further into staying in the fear-based reality, or going further to the I don't like reality, so I'm going to create my own new one.
Right.
I think there may be a little bit of that, of where they get more love and more hate at the same time. Because I mean, if you're looking at that with transits as a person, I mean, that's definitely a make or break time to for things.
But everything works. I mean, here in these early degrees, right? Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto. I mean, they're all working together, right? There's, I mean, you have a bit of maybe a disruptive split with the opposition. I mean, this is just temporary with Pluto Sun in square Chiron, but these outer planets are in total synchrony here, and they're all at early degrees, which to me is the birth of something new, right? At kind of a global or collective level. I think this is when the UN is going to move in, because that's the opposition of when it all started. Now, whether or not they'll be successful, that's a whole other story yet to be written. But I don't think it's going to stop them from trying, right? Like, to me, this is sort of the beginning of a global governance, or at least an attempt towards that end.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So like what I've been telling people over the last couple years, I think like this Saturn Neptune opposition. So people have talked about Agenda 2030 for a while and stuff, and I kind of have a different view on that now than I did a few years ago. I think they way moved that up with the events from 2020 until now. So I kind of see 2030 is not when the battle is. 2030 is like, that's the end. That's the fourth quarter, and you're down 42-0. Like
right, exactly. Yeah.
Game, set, match at that point. To me, the battle for which way mankind's going to go is 2024 to early 2026.
Yeah.
That Saturn Neptune conjunction. It's, I believe I put a blog in chat at the very beginning of the show. I put something up like 7 years ago. I need to update a bunch of stuff on it, but it's got the dates in it and stuff. But there's like 9 planetary stations of Saturn and Neptune, right between 26 Pisces and like 0 to 1 Aries. So Pisces being the last sign of the zodiac, Aries being the first sign. So like 29 Pisces, 0 Aries. That's the beginning and the end.
Right.
That's the 360th degree and the 0 degree. So to me, those are like, even that's why I use like March 19th, 20th as the new year. Because to me, that's the real beginning of, 29 Pisces is the culmination of everything. And 0 Aries is, after the death, the rebirth.
Right.
So to me, that our fate's going to be decided between 2024 and early 2026.
I agree. I totally agree.
I looked back through history, and there was a whole bunch of, so like kind of the problem is I can't find a spot where Saturn and Neptune were conjunct in Pisces at like 28, 29, 0 Aries. Every several hundred years, there's a conjunction of those at like, 7 Pisces or 21 Pisces. But I'm back into the BC era, and I've not found a Saturn-Neptune conjunction at like 28, 29 Pisces, 0 Aries. So the closest things I found was like around the year 864, which was kind of the end of like, we're approaching the end of like the Viking era. Yeah. And like Christianity is kind of starting to like take over paganism and stuff. So to me, this is like, it was Saturn, like I mentioned earlier, like Saturn being our 3D reality, Neptune being our like spiritual constructs of how life works. And then there being like 9 planetary stations of Saturn and Neptune right in those key few degrees in a 1.5 year period. To me, that is like a reset of what our 3D world and our spiritual world looks like. How we're going to perceive God, how we're going to perceive spirituality, how we're going to go and try and bring spirituality into our 3D reality, and how we're going to like view our soul and the constructs of society. I think that's That's all going to change at this time. So that's kind of when I see the, you know, there's people working in the background to fix stuff. I'm now like suspicious of that, because to me that's a dog whistle stand down order by somebody, where 2024 to 2026 is where the real fight is, to where I don't want us to get into 2026 and things are like they are now, because to me that's a bad sign. And within all of that, not zodiac sign, that's a bad sign of where
Yeah.
things are
Yeah.
heading.
Yeah.
And two, within all of that, because I'm Sun 29 Pisces and your Sun is 29 Virgo, so you're going to be getting this massive opposition, and I'm going to be getting this massive conjunction. And so what's really funny too is the nodes are going to cross through that area and that time period too.
That's right. That's right.
Go into Aries in a year and a half. North node is going to be 0 Aries, 29 Pisces.
Yep.
We're going to have alignments like during Pisces season the next 2 years, where next 3 years, we're going to have Saturn, Neptune, Sun, Mercury, Mars, North Node, like right in that area, especially like the 2025, 2026, like we're going to have like massive, like the crazy 1962 February Aquarius lineup.
Right, that's stellium, yeah.
That, but in Pisces. And so is that the birthing of a new religion, a new spirituality for mankind, or is that like the negative connotations of Pisces, a portion of mankind just like checks out and resigns themselves to victimization or escapism? Right. Or do we have like a new great version of how we interact with the spiritual and the paranormal even? So to me, like that, like 2024 to early 2026 that's the battleground.
Yep.
That decides our future. So like that's when we need to kind of be all in and push this in a good direction.
Right. And we have that true node in Aries, which is like the fire starter for that.
Yeah. And there's the dip backs too, like we're doing now with the Pluto at the end of Capricorn back into Aquarius, back into Capricorn.
Yeah.
So we have that too. We're like Neptune stations at 29 Pisces, and it goes to 0 Aries, moves back, and Saturn's doing the same thing at the same time. So there's these. I've got a whole stack of charts printed out with my transits for that time period, and it's like I'm a little bit excited, and I'm a little bit, oh shit. It's an equal.
No, I know. So if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather have to deal with the conjunction versus the opposition. So I would say that the Saturn Neptune conjunction with your sun could be really profound, and then you're dealing with like a high degree of responsibility for whatever it is you're experiencing. I don't even want to speculate on my opposition because where I would go with it would be like, yeah, let's just throw away the key on the guy. Right. So, but I think that there's something that could be interesting besides that, but I think the conjunction, would be fascinating to deal with. Let me kind of ask you a couple more questions about this. So when I see Saturn Neptune here, and especially as we go from like Pisces to Aries, and they're both moving together, right? Like one of the things that really comes up for me is this whole idea of the second coming, right? Like this is the resurrection, right? And at the same time, whether or not we're actually dealing with this whole idea of the second coming and the personification of an individual or an energy, there's some other things that are associated with this that are at times maybe a little troubling and kind of intense. So, you know, if there's not a second coming, I could easily see Saturn, Neptune, like forming kind of like very hardcore, sort of, you know, Christian nationalist, energy, right? Like, you know, really hardcore. Like, you know, if there is no second coming, then you have a whole group of people who are there to either promote it or promote the rapture, or, you know, there's just this really kind of militant, that's the word that I would use, militant kind of Christian energy around this, which is kind of, it's a little creepy in some ways, right? But the other thing too, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is that if this is not the second coming, then could this be the energy that would be ripe for an antichristian figure to emerge?
So agree to all your points, and yeah, I'd say absolutely. So amongst the other theories I have that nobody likes, this is another one. So I kind of feel that there's kind of been like so people talk about ascending to 5D and all this other stuff. I kind of feel that there's kind of been a kind of biblical rapture scenario that's been going on. And I don't like the movie version, you know, people want to imagine people rising up into the sky and, you know, others being left behind on earth. And I think it's more like we're kind of in like that rapture period, but it's not like people physically rising up. It's like people are either staying in the low vibration that's been put around the little blue marble, or they're actively raising their vibration. And it's like there's this division that feels like people are separating like further and further onto two timelines, and just the, you know, people rising up into the sky and off of the earth is just kind of a you know, a metaphor. But what's actually happening is people are dividing into two different like spiritual vibrations. And the more, I think it can very well be, you know, a birth of a new religion, but also, I mean, that 29 that 29 Pisces could definitely be like an antichrist type, you know, great deceiver, great delusion thing, especially when you get in there and you have, you know, Saturn conjunct Neptune and the North Node, and there's going to be a Mars transit in like 2025 or something also, of Mars and Pisces. So there's going to be like Saturn, Neptune, Mars, North Node, stellium. I mean, that's a lot. That's not a chart you run into every day at the last degree of the zodiac.
Right. No, these are very unique and very specific times.
Yeah.
Like, to your point, we've never seen anything like this, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I was into the BC era and can't find a Saturn Neptune conjunction at these degrees. I mean, maybe, you know.
You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last time Saturn and Neptune were conjunct was during the Bolshevik Revolution in Leo. And what we had was the seizure of power from members of like a bloodline in a royal family, which is very Leo, right? Like, that's very specific. And we have this new system that emerges from that time, which is Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism, right? That all starts with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Leo. And so here we go again, Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and it's in Aries, right? And so what does this mean in terms of like the seizure of power, the overthrow of a system, the dissolving of one structure into a new structure? And in Aries, it's all about individuality, right? The you know, man. And so we saw during the Bolshevik Revolution theoretically the end of, sort of bloodline rule, even though it's a slight misnomer, but that's what it looks like, and that's what it stands for. And so I'll throw this back at you. Do you see this with Neptune and Saturn here as being the end of individual power and sovereignty on some level?
I'd say there's very much that potential. Yeah, because even so, you get to, the Pisces energy can have, one of the negatives can be the God Messiah complex, the maybe too much selflessness at times, also maybe too much delusion at times. But yeah, I mean, once you get to that, and then you hit that zero area, you can have the ultimate spiritual glorification or most profound spiritual moment ever. But then you're the newborn. You're at the 000 Aries right after that. So you've have this energy of potentially being spiritually blissed out, but then you're the naive newborn who doesn't know anything but is very rambunctious and
Right.
will be led into or fall into almost anything, because it's the new birth is coming out of this. I've experienced the ultimate conversation with God or whatever, and then there's just maybe a newborn naivety of, boy, I bet everyone felt this exactly the same, and everyone's one with the creator of the universe now. But there's the reality is there's still going to be demons running amok at that point who are more than happy to take advantage of that energy.
Yeah. Also, there's this, and this gets into what we were talking about with like AI and Uranus and Gemini. And there's like this potential for the new man, which is, I think, what you were alluding to, right? But will the new man even be human at that point, right? Like there's so many things going on here. It's like crazy. It's just totally crazy. And then throw in the backdrop of like that little video clip that I just played, where is that going to be, like 2 years from now? It feels to me like there's all these things happening, and some of them I think are actually very serious, like really, really serious. But at the same time, there's also this high strange that's going on. And it feels like Rick and Morty is a documentary, right? Like there's that happening too. And so my question to you is that, do these two things potentially sort of neutralize each other, right? Like you have all this high strange that's kind of out of control, Ready Player One kind of scenario.
Right.
And then you have, sort of the marching orders of the Antichrist and the new fascism kind of happening simultaneously. Like, do these things kind of balance each other out in a weird way?
Yeah, I'd say there's definitely that potential. I mean, because I think, again, like they've already I think they've like mankind's kind of already split. There's kind of this, internal soft civil war that's already been going on. And then if you look too at that, so like that Uranus is going to be exactly trine Pluto and air signs, and that Gemini duality. So what, and Pluto, death, rebirth, transformation, and then with the stuff hitting 0 Aries. So like you mentioned about, is this a new man being born, a new mankind? But then we have the Pluto technology trying that Uranus and Gemini. Do we each get to create an AI or a replica version of ourselves that we can salvage for body parts and stuff like that, you know? I mean, is that where the medical technology is going to go with all this energy? Do we get to clone ourselves so it, hey, I need the new kidney now, or the new, my eyesight is bad, you know, harvest ourselves with that Uranus Gemini duality? I mean, is that going to be one of the things of this? And I just think that the divide, I think, is going to keep growing. Like, you're either going to kind of be a follower or a leader, and you're going to go, you know, things are going to get more extreme in those directions. So I think there's totally a potential for all those outcomes to happen, and they can happen simultaneously with that, you know, that Gemini duality.
Right. So I want to pick up on that thread because Terence McKenna talks about the explosion of novelty, like at the end of time, and everything is happening simultaneously. Right now, he says that it doesn't exponentially increase, right? Like it doesn't start at one place and ends up sort of at an evolutionary point at the end. It all just happens simultaneously. And then at a certain point, it kind of shuts off. So is this what we're looking at here? Like, are we looking at basically from 2025 to, let's say, 2030, when Saturn moves into Taurus, that we just have this wild explosion of novelty happening? And if that's the case, it's like navigating through that, through those 5 years is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen or witnessed before.
Yeah. I mean, we may need multiple versions of ourselves to, you know, keep up with all this stuff. Yeah, because I mean, the clown world ain't slowing down. Clown world's in full throttle at this point. Yeah, I mean, because even after Saturn, and things are gonna get like paranormal, spiritually more weird with the Saturn Neptune at the end of Pisces.
Yeah.
But then with that, the Uranus Gemini and the Pluto Aquarius, and then the Aries energy, the Neptune and Aries, like, yeah, it's like exponential. Like, it's just gonna expand the boundaries of the strange. And you're right, that Saturn and Taurus after that seems to be like the first, like, kind of sane, rational energy there will be for a good span. So it's like, it's almost too, it's this continual, like, having to reinvent yourself constantly, figuring out all the lessons of that, you know, version 7.0 of yourself, and then destroying that and burning it up because it's holding you back, and then having to do, you know, version 8.0 of yourself like 3 months later, because there's just like this constant, you know, Uranus and Gemini too, kind of splitting of the psyche, because Uranus is the third eye, your pineal gland, you know. So there's like a continual osmosis, a splitting of that over and over again as well. I think once we get to that Saturn and Taurus, everybody be like, okay, I need some calm boring at this point.
Well, that, to me, that's the new land, right? And and you're in 2030 territory, right? Like, I think there's a reason why they chose 2030, because that's Saturn and Taurus. That's the new world. That's when everything kind of solidifies and congeals after this period. So is it going to be Klaus Schwab's world, or is it going to be a different kind of world where, you know, things don't go according to plan? And I feel like, in as much as there's a here in this chart, I mean, I think there's a really high degree of actualizing a grand Marshall Plan with Saturn and Neptune, but I don't necessarily think that it has potential of actually being pulled off, right? Even if we move forward a little bit and Chiron goes into Taurus, right, and it's going to be in that square with Pluto, and how's that going to work? I don't think it's. I think there's some kinks in the machinery here a little bit. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be a fait accompli that when 2030 rolls around and Saturn's in Taurus, that we have the new, the brave new world. But there is going to be something new. It will be completely different. It's just a matter of what that different is going to look like. And maybe we'll be living in simultaneous realities. And for some people, they'll be in 2030 world. And for other people, they won't be in 2030 world. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, so what something that ties into this that you brought up earlier was the last time of Uranus in Gemini, and one of my favorite shows from the last several years is on Amazon Prime. There's this show called Man in the High Castle, which was, I think, based off Philip K. Dick novel.
Yeah.
And it's like, what if the Nazis had won World War II? And it spins off. There's these two realities in this show. One where, like, the Nazis didn't really win the war, but they're acting like it, and a lot of the people are going along with it. But these other people have found footage that shows that the Nazis didn't really win the war. That it was, like on our timeline where the Allies won the war and the Nazis were defeated, but like some of the people didn't find out about it, and they just kind of pretended that they won. And so like that Uranus Gemini duality is like, maybe that is one of the things, maybe that's one of the things they're doing with CERN. What if we can have different versions of ourselves on different timelines at the same time? And, maybe one version, like I'm more financially successful and I like that version of that timeline a little better. But the other part of me, the artist, I'm a great musician on the other timeline. So maybe there's like parts of me that like each of the timelines better, and why, maybe it'll get to a point where maybe I don't want to be, maybe that's better. Maybe more options are better. Maybe I don't want to be stuck on just the one timeline.
Well, that's why I say Rick and Morty becomes a documentary.
Right.
Right. The other thing that's interesting that happens during Uranus and Gemini is that Roosevelt gets a third term, which no other president had. And then he dies in his third term. And so they change the rules for how long somebody can become a president, right, or be president. That happens during Uranus and Gemini, which says to me that it's a precursor of some sort of change once again with the presidency. And that we'll be looking at kind of a different iteration or different model of how that all operates.
Yeah, I agree. But if there's an election next year, I'd say that's probably the last one of that
Yep.
shape. I mean, that's the last 2 months of Pluto at 29 Capricorn.
That's it. That's the last outpost, right?
Yep. Last dying gasp
of the old world.
And then you mix that in with Mars is in early Leo at the time of the 2024 election. So like that, and then you combine that with looking at next April, 6 months before the election, we have the second great American eclipse, followed by the Jupiter-Uranus exact conjunction at the end of April of next year.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and that's another, So something else that we haven't had a chance to talk about much because like I think our schedules kind of conflict is just kind of we have our own weird duality, just being exactly opposite zodiac signs. Like you constantly post stuff on like your daily show, well, on all your shows that like have come across my peripheral, but like we've not talked about it.
Right.
Like you'll find an artist at like the same time I found it, or you mentioned a YouTube show and I found it at the same time. Like about a year ago, you posted an old Kate Bush song at the beginning of your show, or maybe it was a year and a half ago or something. I had just, I mean, it was a CD from the 70s. Like I had just purchased a copy of that CD. And then like you, like I had just gotten it in the mail like the day before, and then you played that song the next day. Same thing with the eclipse too. You're at the eclipse next April. The eclipse line goes right over your house on the southern end. It goes directly over where I'm sitting on the northeast end.
Oh wow.
Goes
That's
directly
crazy.
over my house. We're connected not just by the zodiac sign opposition,
Right.
but by this eclipse goes exactly over both of our houses 1,800 miles away or whatever.
That is crazy. That is, so I was aware, obviously, of the other stuff, but that's a really interesting factoid around the eclipse. Man.
Yeah. So we could literally have parties at the same time, right on the eclipse, and like be at the opposite ends of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, man, these two eclipses, especially the April eclipse,
Yeah.
they're going to be intense,
And then,
really intense.
And then the Jupiter-Uranus exact conjunction in Taurus 3 weeks after that.
That's a money thing. Don't you feel like that's kind of entering into like central bank digital currency territory?
Yeah, that fit. So the things that I found, I think the digital currency thing fits, the hyperinflation fits, or economic collapse or whatever would fit also. But again, like the economic collapse should have happened like 3 years ago, and it hasn't. So that
right, yeah.
So what's their when bad behavior doesn't have limits set to it, when there's no boundary set, then what's the reason that bad behavior would stop? They've gone along with and artificially propped it up this long while they're, the robber barons taking money from the bank. What's really their incentive to stop?
Right.
Right. And there has to be an even bigger haul on the back end for them somewhere. And only at that point is it really in their benefit to, I mean, if you got the key to the bank, what's your narrative to blow up the bank? I mean, you've got the keys.
Well, yeah, I mean, at a certain point, there's like, well, how much more do you need? How much more can you rape, pillage, and plunder? Right. And you're absolutely right. Like the economy should have like just completely self-immolated about 3 years ago. And I'm sure they would have loved to have put in the carbon, net carbon zero green economy at that point to replace it, but it's not there. I mean, all the sort of trappings around it are there. Like you could fly on Southwest Airlines right now and you can buy carbon credits online on your phone to offset your flight. I mean, all that shit is already in place for them to launch this new highly oppressive economy. But to your point, it should have probably already happened about 3 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the indicators. I mean, Saturn, Pluto conjunction and Capricorn. I mean, right there's a implosion of how your 3D reality is set up. I mean,
well, that happened, right?
Yeah.
We have not been the same since then.
Yeah.
Even though there are, bits and pieces that seem like we're in a similar reality, but they're only like, I don't know, decorations on a cake, I guess. Let's talk about Trump for a little bit, because you mentioned Mars and Leo at the time of the election, and Trump has Mars and Leo, and he has it on his ascendant. Do you think that based on that, because I looked at Trump's chart and I would say his chart is very electable for 2024. But I also thought with the true node on his Sun Uranus conjunction, although with Uranus, things got really weird for Trump in 2020. But I looked at his chart and I said, man, this guy could get reelected in 2024. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's some decent transits for him then. And I don't like this, but there's one person who had unbelievable transits looking at the 2024 election, and it's Gavin Newsom.
Interesting. So we got Newsom, who's a Libra, got that Mars and Sagittarius, the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo in his chart. What do you see in his chart?
He was, what did he have going on here? He had.
Oh, he's got something in Leo too, doesn't he?
Yes. And he has. I've got his chart here. I can pull it up real quick.
What is this, true node in Leo or something like that? Is that?
Let me load this real quick here.
I'll put it up on the screen for people to see.
Okay. Let's see. Bi-wheel. Let me put him on the.
He's got Jupiter and Leo.
He's got so interview. Okay, so the sun on like election day, the sun is on his Mercury. Venus is on his Mars and his part of fortune. The North Node is conjunct his Saturn.
Oh wow, that's pretty significant.
Jupiter is exactly conjunct his midheaven at 20 Gemini.
And he's going through his nodal return here too.
Yeah, Uranus is trine his Uranus within 1 degree. Pluto is trine his Uranus, but a little bit looser, like 3-degree orb. Venus sextile his Sun. There's another one here.
Pluto Uranus trine, right?
Yeah, Pluto Uranus trine and Uranus trine his Uranus within less than 1 degree, within half a degree.
Yeah, I could totally see. To me, that Jupiter and Leo, it's really funny because
Saturn trine his Mercury within 1 degree.
Let's see. So his Mercury's in Scorpio. Oh, interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, holy crap. Because I looked at some other people and I was like DeSantis' chart looked awful for election day. I didn't really think Kamala had much showing there. Joe's looked terrible at that point.
He won't even be around. They're going to manage him out here pretty soon.
Yeah, that Jupiter Uranus conjunction in April, I think opposes some of his Scorpio stuff. That just looks too big of a thing for him to navigate.
Right. Okay. So let me throw this out at you. This doesn't have a lot to do with astrology, although you may be able to hone in on something. Mike Pence is running for president. And on the surface, people will just laugh, right? Because Mike Pence is he's just wooden. He's stiff, right? There's nothing remarkable about Mike Pence, but Mike Pence was the quarterback in some ways of January 6th.
Yeah.
And he knows where all the bodies are buried. And he knows exactly what went down. He's running for a reason. What do you think of Pence? Not as a candidate, because I think he's terrible.
Yeah.
But this whole idea, remember, he's a Gemini, right? He's a Gemini. And
right. Trump's whole staff. Bill Barr, Gemini too.
Right. So what do you think of Pence as kind of the sort of the Judas 40 pieces of silver, like outside candidate to go up against somebody like Gavin Newsom? Like they could say maybe the deal with Pence would be, well, you could be the Republican candidate. I mean, maybe that's the deal. Maybe it's not like you could be president, but you could be the candidate. And maybe he signs off on that deal. What do you think of something? I mean, a lot of people scoff at Pence as being a serious candidate. I don't, because of what he was into and up to during Jan 6th.
So what's funny is at the very early in the show when you said something about the videos like money changers and stuff like that, the first thing that popped into my head was, remember the video of Pence getting the gold coin?
The coin.
Yep. And still no one in the mainstream media has talked about that 3.5 years later.
Right.
Just completely memory hold. Yeah. So obviously on the forefront, I mean, he's an awful candidate, and as is Nikki Haley and some. So, but you're right. There's got to be some. They've got to know that. They've got to know that, and I think there's a very different. So like at this point, I feel betrayed by every political party on multiple levels.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like angrily independent at this point. So, and I'm unable to put any trust in any party. So the only people that I find that really think that Pence has a chance is kind of like my Democrat friends. Like, I don't think he has very much support on the Republican side. But when you frame it in that thing of he knows where the bodies are, and the thing that's come up in the last few days that would lend some credence of this is, why is the mainstream media suddenly talking about Ray Epps? They whitewashed that for 2.5 years straight. Now suddenly, like, everyone knows who Ray Epps is, when it was like ignored for 2.5 years. So, like, the only reason didn't Pence say he was going to retire? Like 2 years ago, didn't he say he was done? I don't want to run for president. I don't want anything.
Yeah.
Now he's like, so obviously something has, you've picked up on something. Something has happened in the background, obviously. Yeah. Because there's now like 10 people running on the Republican side.
Yeah.
And so like there's, like, it almost feels like insider trading. Like,
it's what it totally feels like. It's total insider trading. And again, people, when I brought this up on Twitter, people were scoffing at me, and I'm like, okay, well, what happened to Bernie Sanders? Bernie Sanders was technically leading both of the primary races that he was in, and he was essentially removed, right?
Well, I knew. I'll try and not get this show kicked off the air. I knew that was rigged in 2016 when the primary was Bernie versus Hillary, because I've got tons of friends and clients that are Democrats, and all parties.
He was kicking her ass all over the place.
There's no doubt that he won that nomination in 2016. There's no doubt.
He was kicking her ass. Yeah.
During the early primaries in 2016, they had, I think it was CNN. So I think it was Wolf Blitzer was still on there. Bernie Sanders is speaking to a football stadium, like 18 to 20,000 people screaming, cheering, their brains out, people outside the stadium waiting to get in. And they took Bernie, they showed like 2 minutes of his speech, and they're like, oh crap. They took him, shrunk him, put him to the bottom of the screen so they could interview Hillary's assistant regional campaign director, who was standing in an empty building with a couple janitors behind her.
Right.
At that point, like, I was like, oh, here we go. I knew in April of 2016 the fix was in.
Right.
That they were not going to let Bernie win at that point.
The thing that always struck me as odd with Bernie Sanders is that for a guy that has Mars and Aries, he sure gives up fucking easily. Right?
Who
Bernie. Yeah.
So who else was in Aries? Wasn't Al Gore in Aries?
Al Gore's in Aries, yeah.
Who else gave up right at the crucial moment?
Yeah, well, Bernie's a Virgo, right? So I would assume, like a Virgo would throw in the towel for the team, right? But he's got Mars and Aries. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
And it's like there was a stand down order given or something.
And even in 2020, when he was still, kind of the stalking horse, right, in the whole thing, Mars was in Aries. It was in his own sign in 2020. And he still couldn't like fucking cross the finish line. I mean, he could. I guess if you get 2 or 3 houses out of the deal,
right.
I guess it's a fair exchange, right?
Right.
On some level. All right, we can't end the show without talking about RFK Jr., who is a Capricorn. We know we've already stated that we have Pluto in Capricorn, the final degrees of the 2024 election. If we get there. What do you think of RFK's chances, astrologically speaking?
So, you know what, I think surely I put his chart in there. I did not. Let me bring it up real quick. I honestly had not. So I felt that the fix was already in on the Democrat side for 2024 when they announced that there's going to be no debates. To me, that was the dog whistle. When I saw that they weren't going to have any debates, I'm like, okay, they're going to. Oops, let me pull up his birth chart. So obviously, I prefer him the best out of anyone on that side at this point. So he is a Capricorn. Where is this at? Okay, there we go. Wait, that's a convoluted mess. I don't want that chart. Okay. So he's got the, what do we got here? Moon, Uranus, and Cancer. Pluto at the end of Leo. So Mars would be, you know what? He's got the Jupiter at 17 Gemini, which is about where Gemini is going to be at that. I think Jupiter's going to be at 20 Gemini. So he's got a Jupiter return right there at the, and he's got Neptune at 26 Libra. Where are his nodes? He's got North Node at 24 Capricorn.
Yeah, I saw that. So Pluto will still be around his North Node.
Maybe. And oh wait, well, hold on a second. Mercury, Sun, Venus, North Node, stellium in Capricorn.
Right. Yeah. You can see that in him. He's got that flinty kind of Capricorn vibe. He looks old and weathered, but at the same time, the guy's rocking a fucking Santa Monica beach body, right?
Right. Mars, Saturn. He's got Mars, Saturn in Scorpio. So that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in April of next year will be opposite his Mars. That'll be sextile his Uranus, though. Jupiter Uranus square his Pluto in April. Once we get into Jupiter, will be forming a good aspect once we get into November. So I would say his chart wise looks pretty decent. I just don't. From what we've seen in recent years, I have a hard time believing they're going to let someone with his stances get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of the coin is that he has some other stances that are pretty much party line stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think obviously I think he's the wild card in this whole thing. It's going to be really interesting. I think they're going to have the first kind of debate forum coming up on Blaze TV, or I think there's going to be who's going to be there. I think Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, and I think somebody else. And Tucker Carlson's going to moderate it. I think that's coming up fairly shortly.
I saw that, and 45 had a previous engagement. Yeah, I mean, if I were going to be able to, if it was my choice to pick the president, it would be Ramaswamy. It's by far the guy I like the best out of.
Well, he's interesting. I think it was Claire sent me a bit of information that what's his name, David Martin, had uncovered around Ramaswamy, and Ramaswamy had either applied for a patent that was connected to some form of nanotech that was also connected to like vaccines. Like there's a weird kind of backstory with him and some of the stuff that he was involved with. Because I think he comes out of the pharmaceutical world, doesn't he? Isn't that where he comes from?
I think he does, but I think he jumped out when things started getting sketchy. So, yeah, I mean, again, black pill number 4,827. I mean, my basic opinion is they're all in on it at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, on every all of them on both parties are probably all in on it.
But I think Vivek would shred most of these guys in a debate.
Oh, it would be ugly.
Yeah,
it would be. He would run circles around them. And same thing for Kennedy on the Democrat side. I think he would dominate, and I think that's already why one of the reasons they said that the Democrats aren't going to have any debates. But right. I just kind of feel that like the two obvious candidates right now are maybe not who the two candidates are when we get into outside of the April chaos of next year.
Right.
I kind of feel that there's room for other things to pop up then.
Right. Well, Mark, this has been really great, kind of future casting here a little bit. And in as much as we're able to kind of look at these transits and these aspects and articulate them, I think we're falling painfully short of like what's coming, because it in my mind, it really defies vocabulary, right? That's kind of like how fast and how much of the high strange we're going to be like catapulted into here.
Yeah, a phrase that I've run across in the last year that I feel is important is normalcy bias. And I think that probably myself, and I'm sure many other astrologers have fallen into, is when you look at something, when you look at the astro, something, when you look at a chart, I mean, there is a normalcy bias, because while Uranus opposite your Mars could be like a crazy transit, there's normally there's a range of things of how things will play out.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe that's like you just miss a car accident, or you have computer issues or something like that, or a stranger confronts you in public or something. But there's also that 1%, 1/100% that, like, Uranus opposite your Mars. Maybe you do get abducted by aliens, or something like that. So maybe I think when you make predictions and try to look at things, we try to look in the past at how things have played out, but like now we're kind of in this realm that, like, the binders are off, and like the realm of outcomes, especially after looking at the last 3 years, the range of outcomes is so much bigger now than it was, that like you almost have to like that feeling of like maybe I'm underselling stuff, because this has the range to really be just total clown world, like on steroids. And it's like kind of like, where do you really I have these thoughts of where do I really place predictions and stuff, like, because it can be so much weirder than like what.
Yeah, we're really on uncharted territory. I mean, that's really where we're going, right, with all of this. And so, yeah, there are predictive models, but if you're going to engage in predictive models, you better expand your mind, and you better be able to articulate sort of the hyper surreal and everything that kind of goes along with it. So Shakti Wisdom Arts has a comment here. And the comment is, does it really matter? The game is rigged, don't you know? I think we all know the game is rigged, right? I think we all understand that there's a uniparty, and
you ain't in it.
right, exactly. But I will say that, and this is an asterisk and a caveat, that in some ways it does matter. And I'll tell you why. Let's go back to 2016 with Donald Trump. You and I already talked about how 3 years ago, the whole economy should have been vaporized, and that we should be like totally in carbon zero, economic CBDC world already. Right.
Yep.
And whatever you think of Trump, whether he talked a good game and delivered up to his promises, whatever, Trump is a disruptor. And what he did is he disrupted the process for 4 years, for better or worse, right? He disrupted the process. And they spent all that time and energy working on trying to take Trump down. And look, if you think that Trump got into office just to have his name dragged through the mud every single day, I think you need to rethink that a little bit. Because if you know anything about Donald Trump, is that he's really proud and he's vain, and he does not want anybody, dragging his name through, a pile of shit every single day. I don't think he said, okay, I'll sign up for this because I owe the Rothschilds and Wilbur Ross all this money for being bailed out. And I don't think he makes that deal. Right. So they spent a huge amount of resources, media wise, political wise. They burned a lot of capital to basically stop whatever was coming, and Trump, I think what I don't even think he realized it. He was not supposed to be president. I've said this over and over again, that when you look at Trump and they tell him he's won, he is fucking stunned, right? He's not acting, he's stunned. And I watched that event, the Owl, it's this event that they have every year in New York, where it's this Owl, what's his name? He's like some kind of, Jesuit, like cardinal or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And they had this big dinner, and it was just before the election. And Trump was there, Melania was there, Hillary was there. Hillary was there with Huma Abedin. And Trump got up there and he fucking took a flamethrower to the entire room. Like he just burned it down. And that was not somebody who was trying to ingratiate themselves with the political class because they thought they were going to win. And I watched him leave that room with Melania, and they looked like two of the loneliest fucking people that I had ever seen. Meanwhile, you have Hillary coming through the crowd, and she's glad handing everybody. She's got Huma Abedin on her arm. I mean, like, if you looked at that and you said to yourself, who do you think is going to win? It's clear. It's going to be Hillary, right? Like, everything based on that moment. So when this thing flipped, and even though Hillary, like, didn't have all her champagne with her, you could tell that the day after the election, she was fucking pissed. Like, really fucking pissed. So you have one guy who I think is stunned that he won. You have another person who's absolutely infuriated that they didn't win. And then what happens? They throw all their resources at Trump. Now, I would say that by doing that, it delayed their program. That's what happened. So does it matter on some level? No, it doesn't. And on another level, sometimes it does, because there are unintended consequences, right? And especially with Pluto and Aquarius, where let's say everything goes according to plan and they get their man Gavin Newsom in. Well, Pluto and Aquarius could absolutely mobilize people to do everything in their power, to take Patrick Bateman down, right? So I would say, does it really matter the game is rigged? Sure it is. But then there's these weird things that happen along the way. And I think Trump was an anomaly. He was a disruptor. And that's why we're not further along ultimately. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's certain timelines they want to throw us down with, run us down with certain scenarios. And I think that's probably one of the things that has played in our, fact that we're still sitting here having a show talking about some of this stuff with all the censorship and all the being put at the bottom of Facebook feeds and stuff. Like this energy is so chaotic and so destructive that we've been through the last 3 years and the next few years that even evil plans don't work either.
Right.
So
I think that's a great point, that even evil plans don't work. Yeah, that absolutely. And by the way, I think there was another comment here was, I'm not a Trumper. Well, you don't have to be a Trumper. And just to understand that he's a disruptor. That's what he did. He disrupted the process. And if you have any belief whatsoever in astrology, and you understand the nature of a Sun-Uranus conjunction in a chart, conjunct the true node, that is what that person does, that they're a disruptor. And no matter what they do, right, it's going to be a disruptive operation. So it kind of goes beyond politics. And disruptive to the point where I'm not even sure somebody with that aspect would be a great leader. Like, that's not great leadership aspects, in my opinion. But it's definitely great disruptive aspects.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have a laundry list of issues with every single political figure on the earth at this point. There's the list of people in politics that I trust at this point doesn't have any names on it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, sometimes you just have to root for chaos.
Right.
Just to keep them from fulfilling their plans to get where they want to do.
Yeah. We were at a lecture by Del Bigtree a few years ago. I think it was it might have been in Tampa. And he was talking about how he used to be a Democrat and a progressive and everything. And one of the things he said is he said, look, I've actually found more traction with what I talk about with Republicans or conservatives. He used the word conservative, which I think is true. And then he said something that was interesting about Trump. He talked about the current guy in the White House. He said, look, I don't really have any belief that that there can be serious change at that level. But what I do know is that what's happening now is disrupting and slowing down the process enough. And I think that was actually a fair take. Ultimately, what is that it did slow down the process. Like, had Hillary been elected, this is a question I'll throw out to you, and we'll try to wind this thing up. Had Hillary been elected, where do you think we would be?
Well, I think so. So knowing that there's astrologers for every big corporation and government, I'm sure, working in the background, picking, let's say it becomes obvious that there are astrologers working for every government and every big corporation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Look at stuff, because you wouldn't be able to randomly like pick these dates out on stuff.
Exactly.
So I mean, I think there was the 8-year plan. I think the aspects for 2024, 2026 is what they originally planned for like 2030. So I think they'd have shut everything down completely, like permanently. I think it would all just be. I think you and me would be sending smoke signals back and forth to each other at this point.
Right.
If there wasn't some disruption to what they want. I mean, look at the amount of stuff it took just to, stop what they were doing in 2020 to 2022. Look how far they were going to go with that, even after people started rebelling.
Right.
You think there's no ending of where, they'd have fired everyone and shut down their income and everything.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. And
running with that.
if you rewind the clock a little bit, that if Hillary had been elected, all the media power that was used against Trump would have been flipped around with the same degree of intensity to support Hillary Clinton. Now think about that.
Same thing in the political machine in the early 2000s when they found the WMDs in Iraq. Everybody behind Bush, and NBC, CBS, every one of them on board. There was no dissenting voice to Bush Jr. in 2001 through 2000.
Brutal. There was nobody.
Yeah.
Ron Paul, maybe.
Yeah. Yep.
Ron
yep.
Paul. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure we're boring the shit out of people in politics.
At least I know I am.
Mark, it's always great to have you on the show. And people can find you at rabbitholeastrology.com, right?
Yep. Or they can find me on Facebook under my name also. I post something daily astro on there.
Mark is a great astrologer, and he really understands the mundane part of the art. So, follow him, check out what he has to say. It's always great to have him on. So stay healthy back there, my friend.
Yep, absolutely. And I just want to point, I think something that you've missed a few times on your shows is I think you sometimes underestimate the amount of influence you have. So I know sometimes you mentioned sometimes the ratings and views and follow-ups and stuff aren't, you deserve higher views and things, but all the circles I run in, like somebody ask and make sure, like, do you follow Robert and did you see his show and everything? I think sometimes you, in true Virgo nature, you underestimate the amount of good you do in this world and the amount of people that you have, especially over the last 3 years, the amount of people that you've helped that you probably are not aware of is probably a 100 times what you think. there's a lot of circles of people that I run into that get a lot of hope and influence. And not to mention, you're the only place I go for news items at this point, because you're the only one that covers the spiritual and the 3D level of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I guess it's a Virgo thing. And I brought it up last week when Mark was on the show, only because of some other interaction that I'd had on Twitter. Right? It's like
Yeah.
I'm really okay with with this whole experience, and it took me a while to kind of get there, but I'm really okay with it. I look at people in chat, and I know a lot of these people, and they're great people, and you and I formed a friendship over the years, and like, what more do we want from life? I'm able to keep the lights on, and feed my cats, and so I'm not I'm not in the streets, like
Feed other people's cats.
yeah, right, exactly. So what exactly, feed other people's cats. So it's like, what more do we really want or need? And again, I'm really reconciled with what kind of how all this is going. It was just somebody else that wasn't, right. And I was just trying to point that out, that I've had to deal with that question in my own life. Not that I'm dealing with it so much now. So thanks for bringing that up, but I do appreciate your insight, and maybe a way that I'm not seeing this. So thanks again, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. I talk frequently with everybody in Chattaria. I appreciate everybody's support and your support. And we have a good group of people around us.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that's really one of the blessings here. So stay healthy. All right.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to talk to you when Saturn and Neptune are on your sun.
I'll be somewhere when that happens.
I'm sure you will be. All right. Take good care, Mark.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
That was Mark Metheny, and a little team up here with Rabbit Hole Astrology. It's been a while since he's been on, and if you haven't been to his website, check it out. He's always adding new content. You can follow him on Facebook as well. He's a really good asset in this world as we try to navigate through these really interesting, strange, chaotic, beautiful, horrific, turbulent times. It's where you get to know what it's like to be a human, or maybe not, depending on where you are when Uranus hits Gemini. All right. Take good care. We'll be back on Sunday night with some more astrology here on the 11th house. Until then, use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to step in what's possible. And if you're open to the possibility of CBD, go check out True Hemp Science, one of our partners here, and a product and a person that we like to support. And if you have any interest in that, there's a link in the description of the show, and you get some nice goodies if you spend $100 or more. Just add in 15 mins as the code word. So until Sunday night, you take good care and stay cool out there. Bye for now.